What up, everybody? InstructaBeats back again here with our statistics unit. Today we're taking a look at mean, median, mode, and range. So let's look at the data and see what our objective is today. Our objective today, we actually have two objectives today, which is the first time we have ever done this. Number one, today I will recognize 4 different statistical measures that can be used to help make sense of data collected. And number 2, today I will be able to find the mean, median, mode, and range of a set of data collected. All right, so first of all, we just learned last lesson the difference between a statistical question and a non-statistical question. So here we have our statistical question that we need to collect data to help answer. What is the typical number of stuffed animals owned by the students in my class? All right, so here's my statistical question. I know I'm going to have some natural variability because I'm asking a bunch of different people and not everybody is the same. And when I collected my data, I asked 11 people and I got a lot of different answers. One person had 8, we had 4, one person had 2, one person had 1, we had another person with 2, one person had 21, somebody didn't have any, we had another person with 2, then somebody had 5, 6, and 7. So you can see there is a wide range of answers called variability, and that's because people are different, right? Not everybody's the same. So now that we have this data collected, what observations can I make, right? What do I do with all this data? There's so many numbers. What do I do? Well, let's take a look at our mathcabulary and find out a little bit of what statisticians do when they collect data. So the first thing we can do is we have something called statistical measures. And these are ways to help generalize a set of data, right? So we had all that data we just collected about every person and all of their stuffed animals. We want to be able to generalize it, make conclusions about it, and then eventually compare it maybe to another classroom, right? So we want to compare it to other sets of data. And one way to do that is using our measures of central tendency, okay? So central tendency describes a set of data by identifying the central position in the data. Basically, kind of where is the middle of it, all right? Because what statisticians have found is there is a tendency or a likelihood that when you collect data, there's going to be a lot grouped around the center, right? People are typically in the middle. They typically don't have 21 stuffed animals. They have 5, 6, 7, 8, right? And you can kind of see that when you looked at our data from our question. So there's this tendency for people kind of to group together in the middle, no matter what you're measuring. Now, not all the time, but there is a tendency. And there are 3 different ways that we can measure that to really help us find, okay, what's the center of our data? And that's mean, median, and mode. So let's take a look at what those mean using a tree map. So we have ways to look at data, and we have our statistical measures, okay? So this is our topic for our tree map, and there are 2 different ways that we're going to learn about that help us measure the statistics, the data that we have. The first one is measure of central tendency. We just talked about that, so trying to measure that middle group. And the other one is measures of variability. In other words, we want to measure the differences in our data. And there are a couple different ways to do that, but one we're going to focus on today is range. So when we ask ourselves, what is the range of the data? You're asking yourselves, okay, what's the spread of the data? What's the difference in the person with the least amount, the minimum, and the person with the most amount, the maximum? Okay, so we want to know, okay, really what is the variability? How much spread or dispersion, right, do we have in our data? And we call that the range. If we want to measure the central tendency, just like we talked about, we have mean, median, and mode. Now the mean is the average of the numbers. Okay, so you add them all up and then you divide by how many people you ask. The median is going to be the middle number when the numbers are listed from least to greatest. And the mode is going to be the number that occurs the most in the set of data. And so we're going to take a look at, with our data we collected for this question, finding the mean, median, mode, and range. But these are the definitions we want to make sure we write down in our notes. And then when we do our example problem, I think it will become more clear. Let's start by finding the range of the data we collected for the stuffed animal question. So again, it's asking me what is the range, or in other words, what's the variability, right? How wide is the spread of numbers? So again, the question we're trying to answer is what is the typical number of stuffed animals owned by the students in my class? And we already talked about this, but we had a lot of different answers. So the best thing to do anytime you have data is to list it in order from least to greatest. So we know the least was 0. All right, there we go. Then I had a 1, I'm going to cross it out as I go to make sure I don't forget anything. And then I had 1, 2, 3 twos. All right, so 3 people had 2 stuffed animals. There we go. Then I had 1 person with 4. I had 1 person with 5. So let me cross both of those out. Then I had somebody with 6. I had somebody with 7. I had somebody with 8. And then I had this large number out here, and this is actually called an outlier, and somebody had 21. Okay, I don't know why you need 21 stuffed animals, but that's okay. Everybody has their own thing they like. So if I want to know the range, I want to find my minimum, which is going to be 0, okay, minimum, and I want to find my maximum, or the biggest number, which is going to be 21, and I want to subtract those two numbers. So 21 minus 0 would be 21. So the range of your data for this is 21 because it's a difference between the smallest number and the biggest number. Let's take this same data and now try to find the mean. So I've already changed the numbers to list them from least to greatest. And again, when you're trying to find the mean, you're trying to find the average number of teddy bears that somebody in the class might have. So you want to add up, right? Just like you find the total, and you're going to divide that by how many parts you have, and that's going to give you the average. You can use a calculator for this, okay? I encourage that because it's not really about working on your adding or dividing today. It's more about understanding what's happening. So grab a calculator, add those up, and your total is going to be 58. So the total number of stuffed animals the entire class had was 58. Now to find the average, you want to divide that by how many people you had in your class. And we had 11 people that answered our question. So we're going to do 58 divided by 11. And again, you can use a calculator for this. And the mean, or the average number of stuffed animals somebody had, I'm going to truncate this at the hundreds place and say 5 and 27 hundredths. Okay, it's going to be a repeating decimal, but you can just stop after the hundredths place. The average number of stuffed animals that one person in the class had is 5 and 27 hundredths. Let's take a look at how that's different from the median. So steps for finding the median. Number 1, order your numbers from least to greatest. Number 2, you're going to cross them out one at a time. I'll show you what I mean by that. And then number 3, if there's only one number left, then that's the median. If there are 2 numbers left, then you're going to find the average of those 2 numbers. I'll show you an example. Just make sure you have the steps down in your notes so you can review them when you need to. When I show you the example, I think you're going to be amazed really at how easy this is, even though I try to make it seem complicated by writing all these words. So when you're doing the median, what you're going to do is you're going to cross out the smallest number and then the largest number, and then the next smallest number, and the next largest number, and you're going to keep doing this, okay, again, being balanced until you have one number left. So you have 2 and 6, 2 and 5, and your median is going to be 4. Now you notice that median and mean, we're both measuring the central part of your data, trying to find the exact middle of it, and you have different answers, okay? And we're going to talk about this next lesson about what's the best way to measure data. Should you use your median? Should you use your mode? Should you use your mean? So stick around next lesson to help you figure that out. Today we're just worried about figuring out how to find the mean, the median, and the mode. So now the only one we have left is your mode. And again, the mode is the number that's seen the most. So in other words, what number do the most students have? You can see that there are 3 students that have 2 stuffed animals. So the mode, or the number that is seen the most frequently, is 2. So you're going to say most students have 2 stuffed animals. Sometimes you're going to have a set of data where there's going to be 2 numbers that are tied, right? So let's say there were 2 2s and 2 4s. Well, both of those numbers would be your mode. Your mode is just simply saying what number is seen the most in your set of data. This set of data is going to be called a unimodal set of data, simply meaning that has one mode. If it had 2 modes, you could call it a bimodal set of data, and that would just be 2 modes. And you look at the prefixes, una, right, or uno, or unicycle, or uniform, 1, bicycle, 2, right? So this is called a unimodal set of data because it only has one mode. Just a little extra information for you. So going back to the point of all of this and being able to measure the data in different ways, what are some observations you can come up with after measuring the central tendency with mean, median, mode, and looking at the measures of variability with the range? You should be able to come up with a couple different observations. One is a lot of people have 2, right? So a lot of people have 2 stuffed animals. Maybe another one is, you could say maybe most people had 4 or 5, right? So we could say 4 or 5 is, oops, there we go. 4 or 5 is about normal, about average. And the way we know that is because our mean was a little over 5 and our mode was 4. So it kind of shows us that the center of our data is around 4 or 5. You could also look at this and say, well, some people like stuffed animals and some people don't, right? Some people had 0 or 1. A lot of people only had 2. And then one person loves stuffed animals, they had 21. So by just looking at the data, breaking it down by using our measures of central tendencies, our measures of variability, we can come up with some conclusions and inferences about the class that we got the data from. And that's the whole point of statistics, being able to look at statistics, make educated conclusions about that, and then have that help us in our life. Or I don't know how stuffed animals help us, but I was trying. All right. Thank you so much for checking us out today. We really appreciate it. We know there's a lot of different options online. We would love for you to subscribe and join our InstructaBeats family. You can follow us on all our social media accounts. Make sure you like the video, leave us a comment, let us know where you're watching from. We appreciate you. InstructaBeats out.